A parliamentary committee recommends former Workers' Party MP Raeesah be fined $35,000 for lying in Parliament and abuse of privilege. The Parliamentary Committee is also asking for public prosecutors to investigate Workers' Party leaders Pritam Singh and Faisal Manap over their conduct before the committee.
For a closer look at the findings and recommendations from the Committee of Privileges, we're joined by Associate Professor Eugene Tan from the School of Law at Singapore Management University. Professor, tell us first what you make of the committee's call to refer the WP leaders, Pritam Singh and Faisal Manap, to the public prosecutor instead of dealing with them directly.
Jill, I didn't expect that, simply because Parliament, under the relevant law, is able to deal, with this matter of the two WP leaders, allegedly giving false evidence, to the Committee of Privileges. But I think when you think about it more, I think it is certainly the right move. It is right simply because we are now dealing with an alleged wrongdoing, the giving of false evidence, lying on affirmation. That wrongdoing, is a criminal one. It is under our main criminal law, the Penal Code, an offence. And so I see that as, in many ways, trying to remove any concern that this finding of giving false evidence, could be motivated by political considerations, given that the Committee of Privileges is dominated by PAP MPs. And eventually, when Parliament will consider the findings and recommendations, that we are looking at a PAP-dominated Parliament. So I think, it is a right move. I think it is something that both Mr. Pritam Singh and Mr. Faisal Manap, should welcome.
So the right move, you say, Professor Tan, but what other advantages might a public prosecution offer?
I think essentially, when we look at, due process, one could say that, the court's process of dealing with a criminal case, would be one, in which both Mr. Pritam Singh and Mr. Faisal Manap, would have their day in court if they are charged. This will also mean that, all the evidence, will have to be considered afresh, both by the public prosecutor in determining whether to charge, the two MPs and the courts as well. And what it also means when the matter goes to the court is that both MPs would also have the opportunity to be represented by legal counsel of their choice. They would also be able to examine, the prosecution's witnesses, right? To rebut the evidence that they have provided. And I think also significantly is the fact that because this involves an alleged criminal wrongdoing, the standard of proof, meaning the level at which the public prosecutor must satisfy the court, would be beyond reasonable doubt, that Mr. Singh, and or Mr. Faisal Manap, did give false evidence, to the Committee of Privileges. So I think in that regard, it has everything going, in terms of these two WP MPs, having the opportunity to clear their names, and have their day in court.
Professor, talk us through why wait until any criminal probe or proceedings against Mr. Singh concludes before Parliament begins to look into the other issues, like how the WP leaders handled Ms. Khan following the initial lies?
I think here we are looking at, a situation in which it would be easier to deal with the other alleged misconduct, which are under the Parliament Privileges, Immunities and Power Act, more serious wrongdoing. Here we are looking at potentially dishonorable conduct as well as contempt of Parliament. And so if the courts, make the finding that and conclude, for example, that the leaders had given false evidence, then it would be easier, for Parliament, or if there's another committee of privileges being established, to deal swiftly with these other possible complaints of dishonorable conduct as well as contempt of Parliament. Ms. Khan's case is a lot more straightforward. It had to do, with breach of parliamentary privilege. So I think the sequencing is important. I think here we are looking at the Committee of Privileges, being mindful of public perception, and so they are proceeding, with caution. As I said, the Committee of Privileges under the law can deal with these complaints, of dishonorable conduct as well as contempt of Parliament. But I think, given the political sensitivities, right, because we're talking about the leading opposition party, we're talking about the leaders of the Workers' Party, as well as the leader of the opposition, that I think the Committee of Privileges has recommended, that the matter be referred, to the public prosecutor. So there will be no question about whether, if they are found guilty or if they are acquitted, that there will be any questions about or concerns about political motivations.
Professor Tan, the committee also looked at the potential role that Workers' Party Chair Sylvia Lim played in this. In contrast, it does look perhaps that she might get a less severe outcome for volunteering evidence that may have been deemed damaging to Mr. Singh.
It does appear so. Although I still can't put my finger on that particular finding, by the Committee of Privileges, that Ms. Sylvia Lim willingly, that Ms. Sylvia Lim had assisted the committee, simply because, I'm not so sure if Ms. Lim willingly and knowingly volunteered evidence, that would be deemed damaging to Mr. Pritam Singh. I think what we saw in the Committee of Privileges hearing, was that the WP leaders, trying to keep to a particular narrative, a unified narrative, So I still have some doubts about whether, she voluntarily assisted the committee. But in any case, I think the larger point really is here. I think Ms. Sylvia Lim would also have taken a severe reputational hit. She is, the most senior of all the current WP MPs in terms of parliamentary experience. She's also the party chairman. And I think, it would be fair to say that, she should have held, her party colleagues, to a much higher standard.
Very quickly, Professor, today's developments, the latest updates, how does this reflect on the WP?
I think it's a severe body blow, right? I think it will put the WP, if it hasn't already, into a crisis mode. And we can see that, Mr. Pritam Singh has gone into, damage control for now. But I think it raises other important questions, legitimate ones as well. Whether, for example, Mr. Singh should step down as the leader of the opposition. Whether the WP team in Aljunied, of which Ms. Lim, Mr. Manap, and Mr. Pritam Singh are 3 out of the 5 MPs, whether they should resign. But I would say that overall, this is a sad day for parliamentary democracy in Singapore, because we have the leader of opposition being implicated, the leading opposition party showing highly questionable conduct. And so I think that's something for us to, to reflect upon, and how do we ensure, that MPs recognize, the solemn duties, that they have undertaken. So to me, that's something that we need to take away from this sad saga.
Associate Professor Eugene Tan from Singapore Management University. Thank you.